mute. A couple of things we need to talk about tonight. Fathers. Today is Father's Day, and we pay special tribute to fathers. One of my very favorite scriptures in the Book of Mormon is, "My father dwelt in a tent." And I know that that's in, I don't remember now, 1st or 2nd Nephi or something. I think it's in 1st Nephi, where Nephi was talking about how his father dwelt in a tent. And some people think, I've heard through the years people making fun of that scripture because it's a short scripture, one easy to memorize and whatever. But it holds a special meaning to me as I've learned more what that means. His father's tent was also faced toward the temple, so that when he left, coming and going, he was always mindful of the Lord and his dedication to the Lord and his service to the Lord. And my father dwelt in a tent, to me, also meant that he stayed. He didn't leave when things got hard. He didn't leave when his wife was complaining and telling him that he was a visionary man and so mad at him because she thought that her sons had perished when he sent them back for the plates. He didn't leave when Laman and Lemuel were so hard and wanting to kill him, or, let's just say had family issues. But he stayed. So my hat's off to all the dads that stay in their kids' lives, no matter what, no matter the odds up against them, no matter what they have to deal with, whatever. Now, with that said, there are instances when it is not a positive experience for a father to be in a child's life. I've had to raise my kids for the last 12 years fatherless. And to say that was hard would be an understatement. I raised 4 sons and a daughter without a father in life. Them longing for and needing a dad in their life. And it was tough. I have 3 of my 4 sons have served missions. 2 of them have been married in the temple. 1 of them still on a mission. And then I have my 21-year-old son living with me. He has Asperger's, but we're hoping that he can serve a service mission. We'll see. And then my daughter, I have a daughter that's 26 and she lives in Valdosta. And through the years, my kids have all told me at different times, "Mom, I think we're okay. I don't think we really need a dad." But they didn't know what they didn't know. And they didn't really understand until they got older the importance of needing a dad in their life. So I want to honor those dads that are able to stay in their children's lives. My kids did not have a choice. And, it was choices that their fathers made that, was the cause of them not being in their life. So I want to pay tribute tonight to those dads. I will tell you, just for future reference, next week we're going to be talking about online dating because apparently that's a hot topic right now. And then in 2 weeks we're going to be talking about the single adult program. So Vicki, if you could join me in 2 weeks and let's talk more about that then, that would be so awesome. And if you want to talk to me more about it tonight after the call, I'm happy to talk to you about it then as well. Or even later on tonight if you feel like we need to do that. Okay?
Okay,
Sound good? What was that?
I'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you can join us tonight.
Oh, okay.
I definitely want you to stay tonight. I'm just letting you know that for the topic purpose, tonight we're talking about dads. We're having a little tribute to Father's Day today. Our webinars are different topics every week about being single in the church. And tonight we're going to pay tribute to those single dads that are a part of their children's lives. I don't know if you guys have watched the movie Courageous. Courageous is our Father's Day tradition movie, and we didn't get to watch it initially today, but we spent the day as a family, family dinner and time together and all that. My missionary son called in. But there's it's a Christian-based movie company that made the movie called Courageous, and it's about 4 dads, all in different family dynamics. One of them is a single dad. I think 2 of them might even be a single dad. And they talk about the different dynamics of being a father and staying in their kids' lives and, just being a part of it. So I have asked a few men to share their thoughts and feelings about either having a dad, being a dad, their thoughts, feelings, insights on fatherhood, and just want to have a little discussion, if you would, about that. I'd actually just planned on just doing this kind of a short time, but it's taken me 30 minutes just to get my technical issues worked out, and let's pray that I can stay on longer. So at this time, if any of you would like to start off, that I've asked beforehand. I see Brian, I see Roger, I see Jason, I see Fred. Any of you, if you want to, any one of you want to start off? So I see 4 of you.
This is my first time, so I'm assuming you can hear me.
Oh yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Hey, Jason.
Thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me. My father passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2012, so I miss my dad a lot. My parents divorced. A little background: when I was 4, my mom moved back home out west, so my father raised me, and so I was very close to my father as an only child. He was a convert to the church. He had a very rough upbringing. And so one of the things a gift that he gave me was his endurance in improving himself and myself in the gospel. He told me before he passed away, he said, I don't care if the gospel's true or not, it works. And everything wonderful and great is because of the gospel and the gift my father gave me of having the gospel in my life. I just lots of stories I could always share about my father, but the one that always, 2 stories. My dad served in the 101st Airborne Division of Vietnam, and he told me that was the first time that he had ever met a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He said that he had walked up to a group of other soldiers out in Vietnam at one of their fire bases, and he said they were debating religion. And he said there's a person who was of the LDS faith, and he said, my church is the only true church. Even though I don't go, it's the only true church out there. And my dad told me it stuck with him, that even though he didn't attend, that he was very proud of his faith and his beliefs. And he said he wished he could have met that man later on in life and let him know and share with him that he had also joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So my father had pancreatic cancer, and he spent about the last month and a half in a hospital going through that process. And I spent every day with him, being there with him and helping him and taking care of him. And I was surprised about the amount of people who came and visited him from his old good friend, and who used to be our stake president from out in Utah, to everybody around the area. And they came in, and they all said wonderful, kind things about him. They shared stories with me that I had no clue about, that he not only just believed in the gospel, but he practiced it. He didn't go around, bragging about, oh, I did this and I did that. And so when I was listening to all these wonderful stories about him, I realized that there's a difference between being great and good. Somebody can be a great inventor, but not a good person. And I realized my father was a good person. And I realized I wanted to be a good person, and I still try to be a good person like my dad. I want to be the kind of person my father was. He had a kid across the street that who had trouble in his life and made terrible decisions. And he would come to my dad and say, Mr. Payton, is there work that I can do to earn money? And my dad said, sure. And he put him to work. And then my dad would leave and go off, and that same kid would then come into my dad's home and break in and steal stuff. My dad knew this. And the same kid would come back the next day and say, Mr. Payton, you have work for me to do. But my father always turned the other cheek because he wanted to give the kid the best chance he had at being a better person than what he had. So I love my father. I miss him tremendously. I am a father of 5 wonderful kids. All of them are boys except for 4 of them. And it's been one of the greatest pleasures of my life to be a father. What can I say? I mean, I know the other guys probably want to say something too. It's been nice having my kids, wish me happy Father's Day and want to do things to celebrate me. I tell them, I've got 18 years of their life. After that, it's up to them. But it's been awesome. And I really appreciate you doing this, Paula, because it means a lot to me because I had a good father, an example, and I try to emulate that. And it's an awesome privilege. And I look forward to hearing some of the other guys speak and say stuff.
It's awesome. That's great. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. And then we have Fred, Brian, or Roger. One of you want to be next?
Sure, I can go next. I'll talk about my dad first and a little bit about me. My dad was kind of similar to Jason's dad in a few ways. He was a convert to the church. He joined the church when he was in the Navy. Then the biggest thing about my dad, I think, was 2 things. His patience. He was always very patient with me and my brother and just everybody, really. And then the second one, the one that always really stuck with me, is my dad just had a heart and a spirit of service. And he was always serving people. And, he really instilled that in me. He passed away in 2006 from ALS. And I gave the eulogy at his funeral, and I told about this experience that we had when I was growing up. One of the families that we home taught for, my dad, she didn't have a working lawnmower, but she had a couple non-working lawnmowers. So he took, the engine from one and the chassis from the other and kind of put it all together and made a Frankenmower and got a working mower out of it. And I told that story, and then after the memorial service, this lady came up to me and she's like, that was me that you were talking about with your dad with the Frankenmower. And I was like, oh, that's crazy, because I was actually talking about this was down in St. Augustine. I was talking about somebody in Peachtree City when I was a kid. And so I guess my dad had done that on more than one occasion. But, he was always serving people, helping people. And that just really, I think, is the biggest thing that's always stuck with me, is just having that spirit to serve others and help others. And then for me, for those of you that don't know, I've got 3 boys. They're 14, 13, and 8. And, I think the biggest thing that I try to do with them, besides, having fun, is help them feel the spirit. And it's really hard right now because their mom left the church, and she doesn't, she claims not to believe in God or anything. And so when they're at her house, they don't get anything spiritual. And so trying to work with my boys on that, it's kind of an uphill battle, but I think that's the thing that I try to do the most, is to help them to feel the spirit and just be an example to them of righteousness, and hope that as they get older, they make the right choices. And then of course we do a lot of things together, service sometimes, fun stuff, just try to do as much as we can together. I think that's about it.
That's awesome, Brian. I love how so much of what you do as a father and what your father did totally incorporates the family proclamation, where it talks about, the family values that are based upon, certain values and characteristics, and those of service, those of wholesome recreation. There's just so much that is so important that you're instilling in them. And that is so very important. I'm loving hearing that. That's really great. Thank you for sharing that. All right, and then we've got Fred, we've got Roger. Pat is on the call too. Anyone else? Who wants to be next?
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I appreciate what Brian said, because when my dad was passing, was sick, and I was going through his stuff. He had his military medals when he was in the Army, and he had the Bronze Star. If you're familiar with the Bronze Star, it's the third highest military award a person can get. And so one of the things I asked him, I said, of all these medals you get, because I was assuming he was going to say the Bronze Star, which medal are you most proud of? And he said it was the Good Conduct Medal. And I was surprised. I said, well, why the Good Conduct Medal? He says, because I did everything that was required of me. One of the things he asked me to do when he passed away, is he said he's always wanted to be remembered that he was faithful to the end. That even though he was, pancreatic cancer, if you're not familiar with it, is literally a death sentence. There's no coming back from it. And he never stopped attending his church meetings. He never stopped doing what was required until the moment he couldn't get out of bed anymore without assistance. And I remember that. And so in the service thing, he's taught me how to do service. My kids and I, we've done service projects for the neighbors, and it's one of the greatest things is the gospel seeing what the gospel did for my father, and knowing where my father came from, and see what the gospel does for somebody. It allowed him to transform to a better father, which allowed me to be a better father for my kids. Because being divorced, it is challenging, because I don't have the challenges that Brian has, but it is because you're not there constantly in the presence, and you do have a sense of loss, and it's not fun. But the one thing I've learned as you battle a divorce is you wonder, are my children going to be okay? And that's when you can turn to the Savior and to the gospel, and with His help, it allows the pain from a divorce, because I come from a divorced family, for your children to be healed and to be okay, and not be a defining moment for them, but an opportunity to grow closer to the Savior, and to heal, and to love the gospel it has to offer. So I do appreciate Brian everything he said. Thank you.
That is awesome. And I think that's a big concern for a lot of us when we have kids that are, going through a divorce, or when we go through a divorce, and whether or not our kids are going to be okay. But I will tell you, quite honestly, even married people have kids that fall away from the church, or, do other things or whatever. Some don't end up whatever okay is, right? So what I have learned is, if the gospel is at the center of what we do and who we are, the Lord does help to make up the difference. Now, with that said, I know I've shared with you before that one of my 5 is not active in the church. Totally left the church. That big and spacious building just was more appealing. And, they're grown. I don't have any say over what they do now. And I do know and feel in my heart that it was because of the result of things stemming from that marriage. And it just is what it is. And there's sometimes it's beyond, not sometimes, that one is beyond my control. It is beyond anything I can do, and I have to leave that in the Lord's hands. So I feel like I've done all that I could do. And my best was given. And I think a lot of times You said you couldn't hear what I said. The big and spacious building was more appealing. You know, it's reference from the Book of Mormon, Lehi's dream. So that's what I call the big and spacious building. The world, the whatever's in the world. It was just more appealing. And anyway, so you know, that child is just determined to do that, and I gotta let them do that. And it's not helpful. There have been people trying to help me feel better to say, well, even the Lord lost a third of his children, or even Lehi lost two of his sons, or even blah, 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 blah. And so it just helps me to remember that it's not just because of divorce. I think kids turn out the best that they can based on what they believe in, what their belief system is. And, you know, we do all that we can do. And I also believe strongly that with a healthy relationship between a mother, or between the parent and child, and then also with a healthy relationship between the two divorced parents. Let's just say that. Because when there's a lot of drama in between the parents, or when there's a lot of negative talk to the kids, those kids take that on. Their self-esteem is instilled in what you believe about the other parent. Because in essence, those kids are going to think that they are that way too. Whether you tell them they are that way or not. Even you can tell a kid all day long it's not their fault. They're still going to believe it was their fault. That's just the way kids are. And through over time, as they get older, whatever, then they'll understand more. But depending on the ages, my youngest at the time of my divorce was 7 years old. He had no clue what was going on. It was too much for him to even try to understand what was going on. And through the years, he did. And through the years, he did understand the need for a father, to the point that he is so dead set on who he's going to be as a husband and a father, because he is not going to be what his father was. He's just so determined to be quite the opposite. So anyway, it has just been, it's been something. So I think we all worry about our children. That's basically what I'm getting at. And as long as we're centered in the gospel, as long as we're following the premise of the proclamation, and we're doing all that we can do, the Lord is going to bless us. All right. Okay, we have others. Other comments?
I think Roger.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Tell you about my dad. My dad. My dad grew up on a small farm. Basically, they lived in a house that had a dirt floor. And from there, he made his way through almost all the way through college until he was going to be drafted in World War II. So instead of being drafted, he decided that he would at least have some control over which branch of the service he went into. So he enlisted in what was in the Army Air Corps. So he missed graduating from college by about a semester. So then he was in the Army Air Corps and was trained to be a pilot. And within like 24 hours from the time he was supposed to be commissioned an officer and get his wings, orders came down to not commission any officers. They didn't need any more pilots, and he was reassigned to North Africa just after Rommel was run out of North Africa, and he was a cryptographer, and a supply sergeant. I tell you those parts of him because those things about him, because he had several instances in his life where he had life-threatening situations where he nearly died. He nearly drowned 2 times. He was almost killed in a car accident once. And those experiences caused him to wonder about his place in the world, his relationship with God. And one of the times he almost drowned, he was pulled out of the water just at the very last second by a man in a boat. He didn't even know he was out of the water until he was back on the beach. And when he came to and was able to talk and everything, he asked the people that were there with him, what happened to the man? Where did he go? And everybody said, what man? We didn't see a man. So anyway, that experience, the last thing going through his mind was, Lord, if you'll save me from this, I promise I will find what I should find as far as the truthfulness of who you are, what you are, so on and so forth. So anyway, to make a long story short, he was a convert to the church. And his conversion story in a nutshell is the day he had the car accident, he made it home, and he laid down on the couch in the living room and put his arms over his head like this, and there was a pamphlet laying on the arm of the couch. By the way, that's my dad right there. That's his flag and everything that was on his casket when he was buried. He was not a combat veteran, but he was a veteran. He died from leukemia in 1977. So anyway, he picked up the pamphlet and started reading it. My dad was always an avid reader. He would read anything. Turned out it was a Joseph Smith pamphlet. And after he read it, he turned it over to find out where it came from, so on and so forth. He asked my mom, where did this come from? She said, some guy stopped by and handed it to me through the door. He said, well, I want to talk to him. And found a phone number. He called him right then. He said, I want to know more. He said, I knew it was true. So anyway, it took a while. It took a while for my mom to join the church. They were basically active members of the church for 4 years before she joined. But it's my dad was a traveling salesman. He wasn't around a lot when I was growing up. But from him, I learned the importance of work, how to work, how important work was, the value of a dollar, and how to provide for a family. And learned a lot of other things, but those were the basic things, even though he wasn't around a lot. The biggest thing I got from my dad was my testimony. I knew that my dad knew it was true. And that has propelled me through life and having children and sharing the gospel with them. I have 3 children. They're all grown. And like Paula was talking about, they don't always choose the things that you hope they do, even though they're raised in the gospel. But you can always hope. And they're always your children, no matter how old they get, no matter how old you get. They're always your children. And there's always things that they can get from us as parents. No matter how old we get, we learn from each other. And that's the beautiful thing about being a parent, especially a dad. And that's it for me, Paula.
Thank you so much, Roger. I really appreciate you sharing that. What a special tribute. Thank you. All right, and then if we could hear from Pat, and then Fred. I don't know if Fred's back with us. But yeah, Pat, are you on?
I'm here.
Okay. If you could share with us your thoughts about fatherhood, especially as a single dad, that would be awesome.
As I grew up, I look at my dad as just definitely the singular, I don't want to say the defining thing in my life, but he was who I learned how to be a man from. He was active in the church. He never met a calling he wouldn't turn down. He served as a branch president on the high council, all of those different things. But really during my formative years, I was probably 12, 13 years old. The church bought an apple orchard in our district area. And they called him to be the caretaker. And so every Saturday I had plans. I went with Dad every Saturday to the apple orchard, whether it was for spraying or for pruning or for whatever. And then I saw other people come in throughout the season to help in, but I saw him there every week. That was his responsibility, and I really learned from that. As a former branch president, and he was in the state presidency, he knew how to deal with people, and I watched him talk to people. And that made a real impression on me as well. He treated everybody with kindness. He was probably the most gentle man I've ever known. And that had a lasting impact on my siblings and myself. And I just think of one instance. We buried my dad just short of 5 years ago. He had a brain cancer, a glioblastoma. My sister made a Facebook page for him just for people to, talk about things that they had experienced. And one of my older cousins, she put in there how she had observed him come home from work one day. And Dad was a small businessman his whole life. He'd come home from work dirty and grimy and covered in hydraulic oil and whatnot. And she says, she was watching us, me and my siblings that day. It was summertime. And my mom would get home from work and she'd go out into the garden out back. And that was her refuge. That was her stress relief. Anyway, he walked right past the house, right past the garden, or right past the house, the garage, everything, where he could get cleaned up, washed up, and to the edge of the garden, waited for Mom. She met him at the edge of the garden, and they embraced and they kissed. And my cousin just remarked at what a touching moment that was for her. She says, in all of my years, I've never seen my parents show affection. And that really touched a nerve in me because that was an everyday occurrence in our home. So thanks, Dad. Sorry about that. Just what a wonderful man, what a wonderful role model. I didn't have to look at him as a father figure because he was mine. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Special memories. All right. Anyone else have any other thoughts that they'd like to share? Any other comments?
I will.
Okay, awesome. Go ahead.
Well, when I was born, the biological parents I had basically just dumped me. So I didn't really have any parents. I was brought up, if you can say brought up, raised in an atmosphere of alcohol and abuse and this type of thing. And I didn't have that bad of a life because I stayed away from all that as much as I could. But by the time I was 11 or 12, I started heading towards a life of delinquency. And when I was 13, I had a vision and a dream of Jesus Christ. And he came, I guess, to save me from where I was headed. Because he told me of himself, and he explained the atonement to me, and he testified to me that his father was alive and here to protect me. And I realized at that point that I did have a father, and I kind of moved on with my life, and this always stuck in me because before this point, I kind of considered God and Jesus Christ to be like somebody in a comic book, like Superman or Batman and Robin. And this really squared that away from me, that they were real, and that I had to be careful with what I did. When I turned 26, which is 13 years later, my wife and I met some missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we were out in the yard playing with our kids, and they walked up, and once again my life changed. And we were both, matter of fact, it's 41 years next month, we were both baptized into the church, and we raised our children in the church. They're now 43, 44, 45, 46, and they live good lives. They're good people, and I'm happy to say that they all believe in Jesus Christ, and so from whence I came to whence I ended up, I feel pretty good about it, and I know that I did everything I could to be a good father and learn from the lessons of how I came up, and to give to my children all the things that I lacked. And I know my wife, my late wife, who was raised in the Methodist Church, I know she gave all her spiritual knowledge to them, and that she gave them everything she could. So when we sent them on their way into their lives, I know that they had all the basis. And my 7 grandchildren also, have been baptized into the church, and I know they have a good base of the Lord. And so I have no fear that these prodigy will go on and do the things that the Lord wants them to do. And so in the end, I guess I feel pretty good about the way it all turned out.
Well, fabulous. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, and Paula,
Uh-huh.
the one that fell away from the church,
Uh-huh.
not lost.
No.
Not lost.
Oh, just making different choices.
That's all.
But thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much. All right. Anyone else want to? No, just opening up to anybody and everybody that wants to share. Any thoughts, feelings, insights? Carmen, you had your hand up earlier. Anyone else? Even if, like Jason, I see you're unmuted. If you have other thoughts to share, go right ahead. Anybody?
One of the things that bugged me for years was Lehi and his wife, and Laman and Lemuel, Nephi and Sam. We had 2, perfect kids, and you had 2 who were not so perfect. And it bothered me because I'm like, how could, the Lord's prophet not have success across the board? And so this last time I was reading the Book of Mormon, I finally got my answer, and the answer wasn't so much that Lehi had failed as a parent, but what happens as a parent when you have a child who goes that direction. And he set the example. He showed us that you love and feign. You always encourage. You always teach, preach, and help them to remember the importance of the gospel and how it can lead them to happiness. And the other thing is you never give up. He's on his deathbed, and he's still admonishing them to repent and to come back into Christ. And so I finally was able to kind of resolve that unsettling feeling, because I've got 5 kids, and I don't know, my oldest is 18, my youngest is 8, and their story is still being written, and I don't know what's going to happen. But I know, and I love the Book of Mormon because it helps you kind of give you guidelines. And so I was able to sit there and say, okay, if one of my kids happens to go this path, what do I do? And, we set the example and showed me as a father how I should do. So, but there's a lot of single ladies out there. There's some good-looking men on here, so I hope that you
All right. Yeah, for me, it was hard at first because I'm like, what do you mean? You already know this. Who in their right mind is going to walk away from this, right? And so yeah, so I totally get that, and it's been challenging as a mom going, okay, now how do I handle this? Do I allow this? Do I do what? You know what I mean? Like, so I've actually had to go and consult, and I consult more with other single parents and I've also with my bishop and that sort of thing, but just trying to handle different things and what I do, how I come across, because I don't want to completely push them away. I don't want to come across like you got to do this or else, because my youngest is 19. That's on a mission, so it's just a little different. But yeah. But Heidi, did you have a comment to make? I see that you unmuted.
Paula?
Yeah, Dennis?
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the beautiful things about agency is that it is a gift, from God. And
Yeah, I know.
it puts us on a path, each individual one, it puts us on a path to make our own decisions. And, our path, we're led by Jesus Christ down our path, and it's straight. But if we get off of that path, we still have our agency, and at any time we can come back.
Right.
And it doesn't matter where our path takes us. What matters is that we use our agency to make the right choice, and the right choice, of course, is Jesus Christ. And
Sure.
I have a feeling that children that are raised in the church, that eventually they all will come back, because eventually their agency will tell them that the only right way is to follow the Lord.
Yep, and that is my
I just have faith in that.
Yes, that is definitely my hope as well. Thank you for sharing that, though, Dennis. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right, Heidi, did you have a comment? I see that you unmuted.
Yeah, I did. I was just gonna say, I was a little hesitant to share this because it's not a very positive outlook, but it's my truth and it's my experience. So this topic is very difficult for me. Like you, Paul, we do have a lot in common. So I don't know my father, and I never met him. And so I have severe abandonment issues and severe trust issues with men. And then my mother was married and divorced 3 times, all members, temple marriages, by the time I was 21. And these priesthood holders were not honorable priesthood holders. And so I didn't see good examples of men, even though they were members of the church and even though my mother was married in the temple. So by the time I turned 18, I was like, I'm out. I can find better elsewhere. And I left the church for a long time. And then I came back, but I was gone for probably about 9 years. And my children both have not had a father figure in their lives. They have their dads. My daughter's dad and her have a very strained relationship, and my son and his dad have a good relationship. And so, but he's not members. Neither one of them are members. And so I have the battle of raising my children in the gospel here, and then my son being influenced by his father and their family, and their beliefs are different than ours. They believe in God and Jesus, but drinking is okay, dipping is okay, things like that. So I have that battle to face as well. So I can relate to Brian and his struggles with trying to raise his children too. But I don't know, maybe I just wanted to say that like this topic is not easy for everyone, and that it is actually heartbreaking for a lot of people. And I commend the men who absolutely do stay, or even the men who choose to help raise children that are not theirs honorably. And so it's kind of difficult because I wanted that for my children. So I sit here and I'm hear these wonderful stories about these men, and I'm going, why couldn't I have that? You know, why didn't I get that experience? Why didn't my children get that experience? You know, it's hard too. It's just really, really hard because you want to know why, what did you do wrong? Or why was that your path? You know, I mean, I have severe abandonment issues, total abandonment issues, because I don't know my dad. He left me. I was easy to leave. And then I never really felt accepted by anybody else because I'm the only mixed child. So I'm different. I've always been different. And anyway, so just all the men who spoke and who did do their very best, thank you. And you did more for your children than you could ever imagine and realize, because this will affect me for the rest of my life. It is a part of my story and it is my truth. And it'll be a part of my children's stories too. So thank you to all those who are honorable men and are trying.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. I thought just like you, because I come from a long line of family history of abuse. And while I was a teenager, member of the church, my parents joined when I was 7. My prayer was that the cycle of abuse would end with me, and that my children would not have to experience that. Sadly, some of them have experienced worse than I did as a child. But what I have learned from this, and what my children have told me, is that the cycle of abuse will end with me. It just didn't end with my children. But my children will not carry on the family history of abuse. Each one of them have resolved to get whatever therapy, whatever book they need to read, whatever help they need, whatever advice from me they need to raise their children so that they won't do what was done to them. So Heidi, even though we didn't get what we wanted, and having children that have a loving father in their life, we do get to have children that become the parents that they need to be to end that cycle. I do know my father. There are days and years I wish I didn't. Because to this day, he is still, let's just say, not a very nice man. And he has never been a positive influence in my life. While I'm grateful that he and my mother did accept the gospel, I was also so incredibly grateful and celebratory of their divorce my senior year of my high school. But what I have learned so much in being a part of the gospel is how necessary it is to have a father in a child's life. Now, I will never know if having my father in my life was good or bad in my life. I do know that I am the opposite of who he was. And it helped me to become a better person in knowing what I did not want, to seek out what I needed to learn. But I had to learn that from other people. I would go to Relief Society sisters and I would say, can I come watch you be a mom? And they would. They would let me come into their home and watch them interact with their children, let me watch them interact with their husbands, family dinners, family evenings, whatever. I got to learn from them. In Relief Society meetings, I would learn things and I would glean from their answers and their responses. And so through the years, and that I call myself a personal development or a self-help junkie, I have quite a collection of books and audiobooks and whatever that I've done through the years that have helped me I didn't know how to become who I wanted to become, but I knew that I knew who I wanted to become, and that I was going to do that. I was going to continue to pray and to seek to get help. Now, I know I've kind of gone off on a big tangent. Sorry about that. But the big issue is that, or the big message in this is that fathers are so necessary. There are women out there, single women, who have gone through a divorce that are hurt for whatever reason and feel and have a good man that's a father, that would be a good father to their children, but because of the hurt and the anger or whatever that they feel, they want to keep them away from their father. And that is wrong. Unless there's something involving abuse or addictions or something like that, they need to be a part of those children's lives. I have moms a lot asking me for advice on how to handle their kids in certain situations. Now, some of them and many of them have their ex-husbands in their lives. I don't have that experience, sadly. There are days I wish I did. Some days I'm thinking, maybe it was a little better. But what I do know is that the kids need both parents, if at all possible. Now, my case, it wasn't possible. But when it is, let them be in their lives. I'm begging you, because it will help your kids. It will benefit your kids so much more.
Paula,
Yeah,
can I interject something?
sure. And then I know Brian also has a comment to make as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Having gone through the same type of situation that you and Heidi are talking about as far as abuse goes, I can tell you, that we have a Father in heaven who loves us, and He is no less of a father than any earthly father. He is more of a father. We are part of Him. And the first precept that I think we have to understand, and the first thing that I learned was I forgave everybody and everything that ever happened to me, because I learned and I knew, and it's my testimony, is as you forgive, you will be forgiven. And I think that maybe some of this pain that is carried on, especially maybe with Heidi, is that maybe she hasn't forgiven. And so she hasn't reached the level of joy in her life that she can.
Well, we don't know that. I mean, forgiveness can...
I don't know that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying with such a reaction like that she has her children in her life, and she is there to protect them. And, whatever He puts on our plate, it's ours to accept. And through the atonement, there should be nothing that we can't face. And I wouldn't say any of this if I hadn't have been through the exact same thing you're talking about. I was abused.
Yeah, I understand that. But what I'm saying, though, is that we can still forgive, and still it hurts us to know that our children are hurting, and that they don't have a father in their life, or something that we long for and that we see others have. That's still hard. It was hard for my youngest son. He refused to go to father-son campouts, not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't stand watching the other boys with their fathers.
Well, I know exactly what you're talking about. I was there. I did that. I know how that feels.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that it still hurts. Whether I can forgive my ex-husband, I've forgiven him. I don't have any vengeance toward him. And forgiveness just means that we don't hold any more malice or vengeance for somebody. It's not like we can forget what they've done, or that it still doesn't hurt in some ways, because sometimes it does. Now,
When our
Brian
Father,
Poole
when our
also
Father
has a
forgives
comment.
us, He forgets.
Right. Well, I'm glad. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to. All right, Brian Poole, I think you had a comment as well. Thank you, Dennis, for your comment, though.
Sure.
You know, I don't know. I wasn't really ready, and I haven't listened to all of this, but
That's okay.
you know, I got on and I've
We're just paying tribute to Dad.
say again, paying tribute to dads. So I don't know. I you know, that was kind of the idea, is what my experiences were with dads. Say it again. Must be some lag.
The ones that stay.
Oh,
You know.
yes, yeah. Yeah, my experience, my personal experience, I don't want to go completely into, but
Sure.
my dad was certainly a role model for me, and I think was kind of a model dad. You know, I only have really good knowledge of him and my uncles and how they kind of done things, and kind of compared how each of my uncles did some things and how my dad did things. And my dad didn't do a whole lot that was negative. There probably was some that was a little bit negative, but overall, Dad tried really hard for us. I felt like he found a really good balance between his career and his home life, and spent a lot of time with us as individuals. And so he was really a role model that helped me to understand how to be a great dad. And I feel like I've taken what I learned from him and kind of grown a little bit from there. Even Dad would take us on vacations, like individually. Like I remember I flew all the way to LA with my dad once, and I think I flew to Seattle once, no, Portland with my dad, just me and him. There were 4 of us kids, and he made time a couple times during my childhood just to go with me, and he did one trip just with the boys, where we went to Cancun with just the boys. And but not only that, but Dad would go to all of our band competitions. He would go to all of our band concerts, and he was just there. But he did it at an expense that was real. You know, he wasn't working when he didn't work. He didn't make money. And some of the other family, uncles and whatnot, worked a good bit more and prospered a little bit more financially. Hang on, buddy. I'm talking, okay? So, okay, I need a minute, okay? I got my little guy here. Okay, I'm on here. I'll be out in a minute. So, anyway, Dad spent a lot of time with us, and really, that's what I learned a lot about as far as being a father, is what the things that I remember aren't necessarily the sit-down lessons and things that he taught us, but the time that he spent with us and the feelings that we had and the adventures that we would go on really were what made the difference to me. So that is has shaped who I am as a father, and given me the determination to understand that the sacrifices are worth it. Hey kids, can you guys go on out for just a minute? I'll come out in just a few minutes. Anyway, that's kind of my life and my little story. It's actually kind of rosy sounding compared to a lot of what yours are. And that's not to say I don't have my own sacrifices, because there are certainly hardships to go along with it. But I just realized that life's not about work. Life's not about the sacrifices. And life is just the means to have those adventures with the kids and that time with the kids. That's the center of my life, is because that's where I get my happiness from, is to be able to do things like that with my kids, and to show them new things and experience new things, and see their eyes light up when they do stuff. And I'm sure that's where Dad got his joy out of fatherhood too. And that's what makes the sacrifice worth it. And I'm not going to go in again personally into the sacrifices, but I'll just say that they are particularly tough lately. But it's worth it. And they're only kids for just a little while. So it won't, the sacrifices won't last forever, and the memories will. So that's
Well, Brian, one of the things that I admire about you is with all of the challenges that you face in different aspects of your life, you are determined to set an example for your children. You are determined to stay strong in the gospel and raise them in the gospel. And I've seen how you are such a huge influence on so many other people, including the men that are single, separated, whatever, and you help them and you try to continue to encourage them no matter what they're going through. And you're a friend to them, and I really just admire that about you, because it is a lot to be a single dad and to raise young children like you, both Brian's are right now, I know, and to have those young children and to make it a priority. Same thing with Brian Kellogg. Oh my goodness, the dedication that you guys put into your children, and with your kids being so young, and just watching you and seeing the influence that you have, it is huge, and it will pay off later. And I know that your kids will have great stories to tell about you as their father, and what a powerful influence and example you will be for them. So thank you for that, to all of you.
I can
for
say
all
for
that you
another,
do. Yeah, go
another
ahead.
perspective that I wanted to give is I'm part of some single dad support groups and a divorced and remarried and separated kind of group that are of LDS people on Facebook, some groups that I'm involved with, and we've gotten advice from some of the guys that have gotten remarried. We've gotten advice from people who are in the middle of separation and people who are fighting just to have their kids in their lives. And there are, I don't, of course, hear the stories that you guys are telling from these guys. I see another side of things where guys are giving up everything that they've got, and literally giving everything they've got, and sometimes still losing their kids, and they would give anything just to have their kids nearby. And I don't think there's probably some that may have done a couple things that may not have been the greatest as a father, but I know there's a bunch of them that haven't necessarily done anything that to have their kids not be in their lives, and have really struggled and struggled with their testimony, and struggled with their self-worth, and struggled with their desire to want to be a father, because a lot of them want to shut that off. They want to close their heart off because they hurt so bad that their kids aren't around. They just want to give up, and they don't want to remember their kids because it hurts, because they don't have a choice to have their kids in their lives. So, and I mean, I know pretty well two or three of them right now that I can tell you that I know personally are hurting really bad because they either have lost or are losing the ability to see their kids. So there is another side to it that probably we don't see because those guys are not around.
And that's the side that's maddening to me, because those children need their dads in their life. So many kids long to be a part of both of their parents' lives. It's not the kids' fault that the parents got a divorce, and they don't need to suffer. If they have the option of being able to see both parents, they need to be able to see both parents. That is just such a huge, huge big deal. I recently heard from a friend, and I won't share her name or anything, but her story is such that now she's a single mom now, but while she was growing up, she was in foster care, I think, for a little bit, or lived with a parent or not a parent, a family member or something. I don't remember exactly the story, but her mom raised her in believing that her father was, didn't want them, was just kind of a mean, hateful, abusive man or whatever, and just didn't want them in their life and that they had to leave. And it wasn't until recently when she did a DNA test that she was able to find her father 20, 30 years later after being taken from him, and got quite a different story than her mom told her. Basically, her mom in the, I don't know if middle of the night or during the day or whatever, but packed up all the kids and took them away. And then they were separated through foster care. And, you know, they would see their mom periodically while growing up. And since then, and just recently, she's been able to reconnect with her father and got quite an opposite story in saying that that she just left one day and that he was searching, trying to find them, because it broke his heart that they couldn't be in his life and that he didn't know where they were, didn't know what was going on, didn't know how to contact them, anything. But they have now reconnected, and all she's hearing from all the other family members, the cousins and the aunts and whatever, just what a wonderful man he was and how much it hurt him that his children were taken from him. And she's got a not so great relationship with her mother, and so they're not really talking, especially after this right now. She's going to have to kind of process it all to be able to talk to her. But how mad she is, how angry she is with her mom right now, knowing that that she took an opportunity away from her to have her father in her life, and how she needed that growing up. So Brian, I commend you in being involved with those groups and continuing to encourage those men to keep going. And I'm going to say to all the moms out there, let your children be in your father's lives. They need their father. That is so vitally important. Now, again, there are cases like mine, like Heidi's, when it's just not possible. And that's okay, and we have to deal with that. There's no way I can have my kid's father in their life. It's just not an option. But there are others that are. So with that, I know it's a little later, but I do appreciate you guys sharing all that. Is there anyone else that wants to share anything or make any comments, have any questions? I'll walk into the room because my computer's about to lose a charge.
I do have a little bit more I can say.
Go right ahead.
One of my daughters has a friend who does not have her dad in her life, and her brother also. And just out of being a friend with my daughter and knowing her back before when her dad was around, and knowing their family a little bit, being able to do some service actually with members of the church. These people are not members. Been able to kind of help out and be a father figure to, this teenage girl, but her teenage brother also, just because they've been around some and we've been able to help out with some service. And it's kind of different to be a father figure for someone who has been through abuse. And it's something that I was never taught to do, never saw anything about how to do it, but have been given thanks for standing in and taking their daughter to daddy-daughter dances with mine and some other things like that. But if you ever get a chance, it's something where you have to really kind of take almost a hands off and wait for them to come to you and kind of, I think it's just kind of a unique circumstance that I've been in with my daughter being around and being a part of that too, and being able to include these other kids. But got some pretty nice thanks today for for showing them what a good, good honorable man and father looks like to someone who doesn't have that in their home and hasn't had that experience. Is kind of a neat experience, but it's also, and it helps me kind of get a perspective on other things too, but is interesting. But if anybody ever has the opportunity to do that, feel free to contact me, I guess, or whatever. But it's just something that's different that I've gotten to experience, and I don't know, just thought I'd share.
That is so awesome. Because there are kids that just don't have the option, like mine or others that don't have the option of having a father in their life. So it is wonderful when there is someone that's willing to step up to be an example and be a father figure, especially when someone's experienced abuse or trauma. So, so yeah, I mean, I know this, we've kind of hit highs and lows with this webinar, but I think we've kind of hit a spectrum of fatherhood and the importance of having those men in our lives. There are a lot of people in the single adult program in the church that want, you know, to remarry, right? And many are looking for someone that would be a great influence for their children in a positive way, not necessarily to take the place of a dad, but to be a good influence, or maybe be an example. And you men are doing that, and that is just so incredible to me, and that's so awesome to be able to know you and to know that you're using your power of influence for good, because Satan wants so bad to tear us down and break us even more, right? He wants us to get discouraged and to give up and to feel like we just can't do anything, or maybe we're not making a difference or whatever. But just know that people are watching you, whether they're married or single or whatever, and you have great power of influence. And it is important to, even as a friend to someone, be able to help them in parenting. Or sometimes you as a friend to a single adult woman can help them with advice on how to handle say custody or whatever with their former spouse, and being able to give them a male perspective that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Because sometimes it is hard for us to see the other side. And it is hard for us sometimes to see from the perspective of other people. Through the years, I've learned somewhat, or as much as I can, I think, of the perspective from a single adult father. That's why my hat's off to you guys that stay, that deal with some of the things that some of the women, your former spouses, have said, done, whatever. And then also there are those that have been able to divorce very amicably, which is so awesome for the kids and awesome for you guys to be able to do that and still have a very healthy relationship with your former spouse, as well as with your children. And that is incredible to me. I mean, even in a divorce situation, that's something I wish I had. Is, you know, just something that we could work out, having both parents involved. And now, you know, it doesn't matter now. My kids are older. My youngest is 19 and my oldest is almost 28. So, you know, it's a little different for me now, but the perspective is still there. And realizing the power of influence, not only of the fathers, but also in mothers, and the way that they treat the relationship with their former spouse, especially in front of their children. And I have a lot of friends that are divorced and are in the single adults that are women and that are dealing with former spouses. And my hat's off to so many of them in the way that they handle it. I think so many of them handle it in a very good, healthy way because they want to have healthy relationships both ways. And then there are others, sadly, that post all the drama on Facebook. And I think that's just sad to me because I do believe that some things just need to remain private. And that's just my opinion, according to me. And then there are people that still have to deal with the hurt and the anger and the back and forth and trying so hard not to keep the kids being a pawn or whatever, because the kids just don't need to be hurt anymore. They've been hurt enough in having to go through a divorce situation or whatever. I love the fact that so many of you work so hard at keeping a healthy relationship with your children and doing fun things, doing service things, doing things that teach them and just spending time with them. And no matter the challenges that you face with your former spouse or not, it's still just a great thing that you do. I know that many of you got to spend your day with your children today, and that's awesome. And it really means a lot to me that you ended your day here with me on this webinar. I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for all that you do in your service to not only the single adult program and being a part of that, but to your children, for the example that you set for so many, because my sons will look to you to be an example, or somebody else's sons will look to you to be an example and to be a mentor, or to be, whatever, or somebody's daughter is going to look to you to be an example of how a man should treat his children. And that's huge, huge, because so many are raised without that opportunity of being able to watch, as Pat was describing earlier, what a healthy relationship looks like. So this is a tough subject for me, but it's one that's very important to me. Through my years, I've definitely learned the importance and value and the role of a husband and a father, and grateful for those of you that have stayed in your children's lives, that are able to stay in your children's lives, that have the healthy relationship and keep working toward a healthy relationship with your former spouse and working out whatever you've got to work out. So thank you for that. Is there anyone else that wants to add any other comments?
Hey, Paula, I just wanted to kind of respond a little bit to Dennis for a minute. I appreciate, Dennis, your insight and your input. I just feel like I should caution you, though, that we are all, trauma affects people differently, and it reroutes our brains. And the fact that you got to a point to where you were able to reroute that for yourself is amazing, and I'm so happy that you're able to, because I live with the pain daily. I have to fight. I have to fight every day the thoughts of being inadequate and not being enough. I'm trying. I'm trying. I go to therapy every week, and I'm trying to retrain my brain to not think that I'm not good enough, or that I'm not inadequate, or that I'm easy to leave and I'm easy to not love. We're all in different places in our journey, and we all process things differently. And for me, it's taken me a lot longer than it's taken you, but I'm trying. So I just think that sometimes we need to have maybe just a little more compassion for everyone, because they're all in different places in their journey, and they all process things differently, and we are all products of the influences that we face. And I know that it sounds like you had a pretty traumatic childhood yourself, And I'm sorry that you did. And I'm so happy that you got to a point to where it doesn't affect you that the way that it affects me, the way my trauma affects me. But I just want you to know that I have forgiven them, but I am a work in progress, and I am trying. I try very, very hard to undo what my trauma has done to me. And it's a daily process for me. So I just wanted to say that.
Holly, you will succeed.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate you sharing that. I second that. Dennis, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell the beautiful young lady that she will succeed. That the path is a matter of her trying, and the fact that she's trying means that she will succeed.
Well,
There's
awesome.
going to be an end to her pain.
And Heidi, you
She
have
will
such
become whole again.
yeah. It's all good. It's all good.
It took me
All right.
many years.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. All right. So Heidi, thank you, and I appreciate your daughter coming in to hug you and wipe your tears too. That's so awesome. What a beautiful daughter you have. It does take us all a little time to work through what we've been through, and it is something, and I will continue to go back to the power and influence that we are over our children is huge. The things we say, the things we do matter. And I am also a big advocate. A lot of people will ask me in raising my kids by myself, because I'll tell them, I said, I just don't believe that you need to say anything negative or a lot, extremely harsh about your former spouse. My first year or two, I can't say that I followed my own rule with my last husband. But I did bite my tongue a lot because I did realize how much it was affecting my kids' self-esteem. So instead I took, was it Thumper's advice? I can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So we just stopped talking about them. And it helped. Now we can talk about them, but we just talk about memories. We talk about good memories. We talk about the influence and how they're going to use that influence, and how they're going to process that for their own lives and that kind of thing, versus the whole bashing them. I'm kind of anti-bashing.
You need to get it out and talk though, but find a good therapist to talk it out with, not in public.
Oh yeah. We did all the talking. That's what I'm saying. The first couple of years we talked. We went through so much therapy, and that they continue to go through therapy, and we have a conversation about him. What I'm saying is I don't bash him. I'm not going to come in and go, that piece of crap did da 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 da, right? That I was so tempted, and that I did say the first couple of years. Now we just more have a conversation about them. We'll talk about how they feel about it, and because he gets out of prison next year and whatever. And so we talk about how that's going to affect them, how they're going to feel about that, how they're going to whatever. Yeah, we talk about that. I'm more. Thank you for clarifying. I'm more meaning than just anti-bashing. So if I don't have anything nice to say, I'm not going to say anything. I just don't want them to think that I think they are that way. So anyway, all right. So thank you for joining me. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that comment. That was very good to clarify that, because they do need to talk about it. They definitely need therapy. Yeah, it's better to talk about it than to ignore it. But they did go through a lot of therapy. We all needed to. And there will be times in their lives when they'll need it off and on. And we're very well aware of that. And I think it's very important. I think therapy is a sign of strength. It's a sign that you've chosen to work through whatever, you feel like you're dealing with. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And happy Father's Day to all you wonderful dads, especially you single dads that continue to stay in your children's lives and not give up. And continue to do what you need to do to stay a part of their life. Whatever sacrifice you need to make, whatever challenge you need to face. Thank you. Just thank you, because it makes a difference to the rest of us. Thanks. So with that, I'm signing off, and we'll see you next week. Next week it's online dating, and the week after that we're going to be talking more about single adult program. Happy. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.